Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of our Platinum games as we climbed up to Diamond 1 on night 1 here of the Season 6, the new season here on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. It's still the same time that I recorded the previous video. The Trizu video should have come out before this one, so we're still about 6 hours into the season at this point, and I'm still at Platinum 3 right now. If you didn't watch that other video, then I'll mention here as well that this season, just due to IRL stuff happening as well as trying to not get too fatigued or burned out on Master Duel in general, I'm not going to be trying to like climb quite as quickly as I usually do. Like, you know, normally I'm all about getting to the highest rank, Diamond 1 now, in just like as quickly as possible, like within 24 or 48 hours or something like that. But this season is going to be a little bit more laid back for me. I'll still try to shoot for the first week as my goal, and I think I should still be able to do that without too much trouble. Yeah, like I said, it's going to be a little bit more of a laid-back experience. But again, that's not to say I'm going to like just, you know, slack off or anything. Like ideally, I do still have the next few days set aside to ladder, and ideally I do still get to Diamond 1 in the next few days. But yeah, like I said, I'm just not trying to go quite as quickly as I have in the past. So yeah, like I mentioned in the last video, you know, we were playing Trizu with DPE, and then I mentioned like, oh, as you saw like in the title and thumbnail, I ran into a whole bunch of decks playing Kaiju. So I was like, well, you know, if everyone's gonna be Kaijuing my DPE, I'll just go ahead and move into Swordsoul Tenyi now, where I don't have a DPE to get Kaiju'd. So that's always nice. And also, you know, the deck's also, in my opinion, just the most powerful deck right now, slightly edging out Trizu as the top tier 1 deck. And for obvious reasons, that makes it good to climb with as well. I'm still kind of struggling to figure out if it's better for me to climb more with this or with Trizu, because even though this is, you know, I just got done saying this is the better of the two decks, so why would I struggle thinking about that? Well, it's not always just about how powerful the deck is, right? When picking a good deck to climb, especially if you want to climb relatively quickly, in fact, I would say it's more important to play a deck you know better as opposed to like a top meta deck that you don't know. Like, if you're only just now building Swordsoul Tenyi and you've never played with it before, now is probably not the time to try to get Diamond 1 with it. You should probably, I mean, if it's something if you're committed to playing it in general, then yeah, you could ladder with it now, because the best practice you're ever gonna get is on ladder. But if you want to climb particularly quickly, then it might be better to play a lower tier deck that you know very well, because, you know, any deck can get to Diamond 1, just about any deck. But any rogue or up deck, like any basically tier 4 or above deck, is certainly extremely capable of getting to Diamond 1, even within the first few days if you know it well enough, and if you're teched out against the meta. And you know, rogue / tier 4, whichever you want to call it, encompasses a lot of decks, like a lot of decks. So yeah, definitely don't feel like you have to play tier 1 to ladder quickly. And again, like I've been saying, I'll offer this piece of advice one more time just so it really drills home. If you are more experienced with a lesser tier deck, you will very typically see better results with that deck than a higher tier deck that you do not know well. So yeah, I just want to throw that out there as advice. I don't really see people talking about that too much, and I think it's an important point to make. So yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be climbing more with this or more with Trizu. I'll still be using a blend of both decks probably, but right now I'm still inclined to be playing more with this, because like I just mentioned, the best practice you're ever gonna get is gonna be on ladder anyway. So if I want to learn the deck better, then yeah, why not? We'll just go ahead and continue to ladder with it. Alright, now as always, let's go ahead and break down the list card by card. I'm still playing the same list. There have been no changes from the deck profile that I featured a few days ago. So let's take a look at this list here. We've got 1 Effect Veiler, 1 Deskbot 001, 3 Tenyi Spirit Adhara, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Swordsoul of Mo Ye, 2 Swordsoul of Taia, 2 Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, 3 Swordsoul Strategist Longyuan, 2 Tenyi Spirit Vishuda, 3 Tenyi Spirit Ashuna, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Archnemesis Protos, 2 Vessel for the Dragon Cycle, 3 Swordsoul Emergence, 2 Called by the Grave, 3 Crossout Designator, 1 Infinite Impermanence, and 1 Swordsoul Blackout. Now down here in the extra deck, we've got 1 Yazi, Evil of the Yang Zing, 2 Baxia, Brightness of the Yang Zing, 1 Draco, Berserker of the Tenyi, 1 Adamant's Spirit and Dragite, 2 Swordsoul Grandmaster Qi Shao, 1 Chao Fang, Phantom of the Yang Zing, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Cheng Ying, 2 Monk of the Tenyi, 1 Crystron Halki Fibrax, 1 Shaman of the Tenyi, and then finally 1 Mecha Phantom Beast Auroradon. So yeah, as I continue to play the deck here, oh, there was one change I was kind of considering making. I've seen a lot of comments suggesting that I could drop down to 1 Taia, because since I'm not playing Desires, you don't really need multiple copies, because you typically only need 1. And it's definitely a change I could see myself making, potentially dropping a Taia for like a second Imperm to attack against other Swordsoul Tenyi decks would probably be the change I would make. There is still a part of me that does like having 2 Taia because it's more likely to open with it, and Taia isn't always good at opening, but can often be really clutch if you've got like the Tenyis in hand to set up like a Halka-Auroradon line. But that is a very niche case, so yeah, I could definitely see myself in the very near future, perhaps even still while I'm climbing, if I start to see a lot more mirror matches, then yeah, I could easily see myself dropping a Taia for an Imperm, and if I decide to make that change, you guys will definitely be the first to know. I will be sure to update you with another video there. But yeah, liking this build a whole lot overall. You know, in the past, I might have been a little bit resistant to trying Protos and the Hulk line. I guess I've been using the Hulk line for a little while now. Actually, now that I think about it, at this current point in time, I've been using the Halka-Auroradon line probably about as long as I wasn't using it. So, but Protos is still a relatively recent addition, and I am a huge fan of Protos. I mean, it's like the Halka-Auroradon line, and I touched on this in my last video. You know, Protos, not necessary by any means. You can absolutely get away with playing this deck without it, and it's not even that bad to play without it. But Protos does add a lot more than it looks like it would on paper, honestly. And the reasons not to play Protos definitely do get outweighed by the reasons to play it. So, like, if you have the option to play it, then I think you should definitely be playing 1 Archnemesis Protos. Is it Arch or Arch? I guess you could do it either way, pronounce it either way, but who knows? Yeah, definitely still liking the 3 crossouts a whole lot. I mean, you know, as we all know, this is a very crossout designator format. I touched on this a bit in the Trizu video too, but like, when a format comes around where Crossout Designator tends to get played a lot, then it kind of like feeds into itself, right? Because, you know, you want to play, if you're playing a bunch of Crossout Designators, you want to play a variety of answers in order to be able to, you know, hit a variety of answers with a Crossout Designator. But then as more people are playing Crossout Designator, more people tend to play a more variety of answers, which makes Crossout Designator better because it can hit a variety of stuff. So it, like I said, just kind of feeds into itself. It's kind of funny how that works out. But yeah, in this deck especially with all the mirror matches running around, this card is very much like a quick play spell, Solemn Judgment. Like, it's just nuts. I like it a lot. Yeah, that's about all I've got to say about the build. As always, if you have any suggestions for it, do let me know in the comments. I'm always open to hearing from you guys in that regard. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some gameplay now. Okay, so this first game we're going to be watching here is actually against the mirror match, which is pretty rad. Definitely like showcasing mirror match games. I mean, we'll likely be seeing a lot of them anyway, but it's a matchup that, you know, is going to be quite common, so being prepared for it is always nice. We're going to be taking the second turn here, which is also nice because I've seen people say, you know, hey, I'd like to see more going second games, and I do try to show good going second games when I get them, and this is one of those, so. Yeah, opponent's going to lead straight off the bat into Cheng Ying as opposed to Baron here, even though they're not locked into Worms. I don't know. I'm not really sure about this. Like, I can definitely see why my opponent would go into Cheng Ying, especially putting it in defense mode is a little bit better against stuff like Lightning Storm, and, you know, it could also depend on their back row. I'm actually highly suspicious that this back row is a Blackout, because I can't really think of any other reason why you would make Cheng Ying over Baron turn 1 if you had the option to make either. So I'm going to be kind of playing, well, trying to play around. Can't really do a whole lot with this hand, though. Playing around this, the back row is Don't Worry Blackout, but yeah, like I said, not really a whole lot I can do with this hand. Vessel just unfortunately does not really do anything by itself. I mean, you can Foolish a Tenyi, but you can't use any of them without having a non-effect monster on the board, and we can't get to a non-effect monster with this hand, so Yeah, unfortunately here, I'm just going to have to set... I'll set a bunch of back rows here and then just pass to my opponent. Since I know I'm playing the mirror match, I'm not really afraid of like Lightning Storm or Feather Duster because this deck doesn't really run those cards. I've kind of been thinking about maybe trying to fit in room for a Feather Duster against like Eldritch and Stun decks, because this deck is a little bit weak to a whole bunch of back row in that way, but ultimately I decided not really worth trying to find the space there. So fortunately our opponent just draws attacks and passes. That's perfect, you know, that's what I want to see from them. I draw Mo Ye here, which unfortunately is not live because my Blackout is face down, which I do still think it was right to set Blackout there. And yeah, Vessel does not really work with Mo Ye to make it live. I also thought about summoning Mo Ye to potentially use the Blackout, but I didn't really want the, you know, Cheng Yang to be able to get its... Well, I guess the Cheng Yang would have been able to get its effect off now that I think about it, because I don't have a card in my graveyard for them to banish. So yeah, I actually totally could have normal summoned Mo Ye here, and then flip the Blackout and pop this, and then yeah, I don't have something... Well, no, they still could have protected it, that's right. That's what the issue was. It's not that one of my things would have gotten banished, and then they would have been able to banish my Mo Ye out of my grave after the effect resolved, so never mind, I made the right decision. I thought I caught myself in a slight misplay there, but no, it doesn't look like I did. I don't think so, anyway. As always, if you guys do catch any slight misplays, or major misplays, I mean any amount of misplays, I do love to hear constructive criticism about those in the comments, as I believe that is by and far the fastest and easiest way to improve at any game, is getting good constructive criticism and watching back your replays like this, like I'm doing here. You know, that little catch I did there, like there are, I mean obviously that didn't really amount to anything in this particular case, but there are times where you'll be watching your replays back and catch stuff like that, so it is good to make a habit of just watching your replays in general. I know I do it, even if they're ones that I'm not necessarily using for a video. I'll still save games and go back and watch them. Not all the time, but sometimes. Yeah, so my opponent's got a Maxi here. I'm going to go ahead and call by. This is going to trigger the Cheng Yang here, but I'm fine with that because then I can just go ahead and use the Blackout here. Get rid of my opponent's face down card, which I'm suspecting might still be a Blackout. It turns out to be a call by, so I'm really not sure why they went into Cheng Yang as opposed to Baron on turn 1. I mean, not that I think, again, it was a bad call, but it's just a little bit confusing to me. I don't know. We do get the Swordsoul token out here, so that does at least trigger our Vessel, but, you know, as long as you've got the Swordsoul token out, you can't special summon aside from Secret Summoning, so it doesn't mean we're going to be able to necessarily set anything up here. This is actually, I think, that I've noticed anyway, the first time where I was really like, okay, I could actually use the Shathana, which is one of the level 4 Tenyi monsters. Would actually have been pretty good here, as I could have made a level 8 Synchro, but we can still bounce the Cheng Yang anyway, so I'm not too concerned with it. And actually, I think I could have done this play last turn, right? Did I not use my normal summon? I actually was meant to watch out for this, but I totally forgot to because I was rambling about something else, but it wasn't until this turn that I remembered, oh yeah, duh, you can banish the Tenyis from your hand. They don't have to be engraved. So I banished the Adhara to add back the Mo Ye. I don't remember if I used my normal summon last turn. If I could have done this last turn, obviously it would have been better for me to have done it there. But shoot, yeah, I meant to watch for that, but didn't. So again, I'll rely on you folks in the comments to let me know if I slipped up by not using Adhara from Mo Ye last turn. Yeah, so opponent's got an Imperm here to stop the search, but, you know, it's definitely more important to just get the body on board. And we still get a draw here as well, so... yeah, the Ashuna is a decent draw here. But again, definitely more important that we got the body on the board. Not just any body, too. Chi Xiao being able to negate monster effects, obviously really, really good in the mirror match, especially when our opponent's really low on cards. Because, yeah, for scenarios exactly like this, they top deck the Mo Ye, we can just go ahead and negate it with the Chi Xiao here. So yeah, now we also know that their last card is for sure Ashuna. I'm willing to bet they had Mo Ye earlier. Good play here on my opponent's part. They're going to battle phase, run the Mo Ye into my Chi Xiao, and then special the Asha in order to make, you know, some amount of plays here. Which, you know, I definitely respect my opponent here for being willing to run into my monster like that. I mean, even if it seems obvious that that was the right thing to do, you know, it's not always the case to a lot of people. Myself included sometimes, you know, making plays where the best thing is to do a weird trade like that, like, it can be kind of hard sometimes to remove your, like, quote-unquote mental blockers. Like, you know, you think, you know, trying to move past that inhibition in your head where you're like, oh, why would I ever attack my monster into a stronger one only for it to get destroyed? That's like a very like Yu-Gi-Oh 101. Like, you know, obviously you don't want to do that, but then, you know, there's like level 2 strategizing like my opponent did here, where it can kind of be right. Now my opponent didn't really have any good options here. They just ended up ending on a shaman anyway, but yeah, so I think I drew the Ash here because I already had the Ashuna, so with that I'm pretty easily able to go into a Halcline. I already know my opponent doesn't really have anything to stop me as far as hand traps go, so yeah, as soon as they know I've got the Deskbot, they know I have lethal, and they go ahead and give us the win there. So like I said, always nice to show very good back and forth, particularly with the mirror match and going second there. So alright, let's go ahead and look at the next game. So this game is going to be against some kind of... I just looked at the deck list that I'm not quite sure. It kind of seems like maybe some kind of Utopia OTK with double or nothing. But it's also playing Crooked Crook stuff, so it might be that. I don't know. But we're going to be taking the first turn here. Our opening hand's looking pretty good. You know, we did open with Deskbot, but... You know, Ashuna plus Adhara, always a welcome sight. And then we got the Ecclesia and Longyuan on top of that. So, yeah, as always, we're going to lead with Ashuna for the Monk. And then we can special the Adhara. Now I can go ahead and use Ecclesia and see if I can, like, you know, if I need to bait out an answer here. Like, if I do, you know, then I can just go into the Halcline. But if I don't, then that's obviously fine too, because I can just keep comboing regularly there. So it doesn't look like my opponent really has anything. I'm going to go ahead and do the Mo Ye and Chi Shao, you know, pretty typical stuff. Chain blocking the Chi Shao search with the Mo Ye draw. Drawing the Vishuda, an extremely good draw here, because now I have something to discard with Longyuan, and now I can get Emergence and just set up a Protos here instead. So actually, that's right, I kept this game in particular, if this is indeed the game I'm thinking of, which I'm pretty sure it is, because I actually get a really insane setup here, where I get not only Chi Shao plus Baron, but I'm also going to be able to set up Chao Feng and a Protos on top of it. I'll just spoil it a little bit here. Because, yeah, I'm able to use Ashuna to summon the Baxia. Now I can use Baxia to pop the Monk and bring back the Adhara that's in my grave that I just used to sink. Now I can use Adhara plus Baxia to go into Chao Feng. And since I used a light Yang Zing monster as part of the secret materials, then my opponent can't do any light effects during their next turn. And then on top of that, I can use the Emergence I searched up to get a Protos because I control synchro monsters, and I can just call Dark. So, yeah, now my opponent cannot use light effects during their next turn, and they can't summon Dark monsters. So, that's obviously going to be really, really good. So, my opponent's going to vomit out a bunch of level 4s here, but during the actual game, these definitely did not come out that quickly. My opponent led by summoning Ecclesia, and at first I thought it was a mirror match, and I was like, okay, that's really good that I got the Chao Feng out. And maybe they were planning to use Ecclesia's effects and just didn't realize what Chao Feng did. But, yeah, from there, they then special the Armed Sage, and then they special the Mandragora, and then finally normal, or no, they special the Hat Trick. I think they specialed all these. So, yeah, like I said, they just vomit out. Well, actually, I can just look here. Yeah, they did. No, they normal summon the Mandragora. Okay. But yeah, they just vomit out a whole bunch of level 4s here. Opponent leads by going into this at Ignister, which is another reason why I say maybe they didn't realize what the Chao Feng did here, because it seems like they might have been trying to use this effect to blow up one of my monsters, but again, they weren't able to even attempt to activate it because I used Baxia for Chao Feng, so they cannot activate light monsters' effects. They'll then go into Crooked Crook and try to use that effect to blow up everything on the board, but I've still got Chi Shao and the Baron negate here, so multiple ways to stop it and ways to stop something that is attempting to stop me. So, yeah, then they overlay into Vespinato here. I guess they just didn't, you know, I don't know, I didn't really have anything else to do at this point. They are going to still get a battle and go into Zeus here, which I think is kind of interesting. But, you know, again, Zeus being a light monster, they still aren't able to do anything. So, this game really kind of shows, like, because, you know, it's pretty easy to look at Chao Feng and be like, oh, this card seems pretty niche, I can probably just cut it. And admittedly, you don't really tend to summon this monster a whole lot. But there are just enough games. Oh, I thought I was going to be able to keep looking at Xiao Fang's effect if I paused quickly enough, but guess not. But there are just enough scenarios where Xiao Fang does come up, but especially against the mirror match. Like, if you can make Xiao Fang going first against the mirror match, then you know, not only is that incredible Ecclesia they can't use, but also Qi Xiao is light, more importantly. So that's going to cut off, and Baxia. Like, those are the main synchro extenders, and they won't be able to use either of them. So Xiao Fang, while a slightly more optional, you know, card for the extra deck, I think this game does a good job of showcasing just how powerful it can be. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next game here. Okay, this next game we're going to watch is going to be against Sky Strikers. Had a very interesting, very good back and forth game here. Actually, the next one's going to be, you know, quite a decent bit of a back and forth as well. Which is kind of, when I say a good back and forth, I just kind of mean like it was a lot of turns. So we're going to take the first turn here. Opening hand's looking fairly good. We're going to start with Mo Ye, revealing the Taia. Opponent's got an effect veiler, which is pretty annoying, but we do have a call by, so we can just go ahead and drop that in order to let our Mo Ye resolve, except our opponent has a second effect veiler, which is extremely annoying. So no Mo Ye for us, unfortunately. And that unfortunately also means we're not going to get the Protos set up here either. So kind of just relying on maybe using this Taia next turn with the Mo Ye that gets sent to grave, if it gets sent to grave. So yeah, opponent's starting down on a few cards, but yeah, they play the Mecha Hornets, and then yeah, it's pretty obvious, or the Hornet Drones rather, and then it's obviously Sky Striker at this point. I've got the Maxx, and this is actually a scenario where Maxx is really good against Sky Striker, because it's not always the case, but then the opponent's got the Ash too. So opponent opening Ash and double Veiler like definitely set me way far back in this game. You know, looking at that opening hand, that it really should have been kind of an open and shut game. Well, yeah, I say should have, but there's no real should have in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's actually a phrase I do make an active effort to eliminate from my vocabulary when talking about games, and I think it's one that most players could make an active effort to avoid, which is saying like, oh, I should have won that game. Well, it's like, well, unless you're talking about a misplay that you made that caused you to lose the game, unless you're speaking specifically about a scenario like that, then no, there's no like should have wons. You know, it's like, oh, I should have won. Sorry, I bumped the desk there. Oh, I should have won this game, but my opponent had this hand trap. Well, then it's like, well, then no, you shouldn't have won the game because your opponent had the out. Like, it's about, you know, I've always been big about mentality. In terms of the advice I give on this channel, you guys have heard that from me a lot, but I still maintain, and I still do think that the mentality you have going into a game is going to dictate how it goes, more so than most people probably realize. By the way, I do go into the Taia here because obviously I've got two Taia and a Protos, so I'm not going to really be able to do a whole lot else, but also even though I know the Taia is going to get negated and or destroyed, that is then going to allow me to go into Protos, and if I call Dark, that's not only going to prevent my opponent from getting their DPE back, but it's also going to prevent them from getting their Ray back when I destroy the Shizuku as well. So even though we had a bit of a lackluster start, I'm thinking, okay, Protos might have just single-handedly bailed me out here because I was able to shut off everything my opponent was able to do. Now, they do have the Engage here, and they actually add the Afterburners. I don't think they realized initially that, you know, Protos can't be destroyed by card effects, so I'm thinking, okay, this is a good scenario. I can just keep calling Dark with Protos, and yeah, I go to some of the Taia here, even though I don't have something to banish, just to get some more damage in. It's like, okay, my opponent's down to 29. This scenario is looking definitely not bad for me here. I know one of the face downs is Afterburners, which I know they can't use on the Protos here. They do set a card, and then I guess I don't know if they thought, like, they just forgot about the Celestial last turn. I don't blame them too much if they did, but because I've definitely done that before too. But they then use the Celestial, and then they draw the Engage, and now they've got the Widow Anchor, and now this is kind of the stage of the game where it's like, oh no, like, now my opponent's gonna, yeah, link my Protos off, and yeah, I'm going to be able to go for the Halcyon. Now, they are still locked down by Protos, so they actually can't summon out the access code here. But my opponent still does have to do this because the only other link to option to link away my Protos is Zeke, which is also dark, and my opponent can't summon that either, so. This is going to mean that they'll have the Veiler in the effect monster zone, which means that, or the main monster zone, which means any Sky Striker spells here are not going to be turned on. So I want to take advantage of this turn if possible. I do have the Vishuda here, and I do still have a full extra deck, but Yeah, I'm gonna have to let this Maxx resolve, even though I've got the Ash in hand, because, well, the only play I've got right now is the Hulk line. I need the Ash to be able to do that, so I'm gonna have to play into my opponent's Maxx here if I'm gonna have a shot at winning this game. So we go ahead and, but like I said, they have a Valor in the main monster zone, so at the very least I know they won't Sky Striker spell, but they have the Imperm for the Hulk. So I was thinking like, oh please, even if they have Widow Anchor, it's not actually an out, please. And I know one of the back rows is Afterburners, but no. Unfortunately, they do have the Imperm down, which is going to stop my Hulk and in turn my whole combo right in its tracks. So I'll go ahead and battle one of the Valors here, but it's not really going to matter. I know they're just going to go into access code, and then at that point they only need 500 more damage to win, and I'm in top deck mode, so yeah, this one was close, but unfortunately our opponent had like probably literally one too many answers, especially at the beginning there. If they didn't have both like the double Valor and Ash, like that was definitely very brutal for us there. And yeah, even after Desire's draw, my opponent's still not able to find another monster here, but that's, you know, not really going to matter the one extra turn here. Like I said earlier, I'm down to 500, I'm in top deck mode, and up against that many back row, there's not really any one card I can draw here that's going to get me out of this. And of those cards, it's definitely not going to be Deskbot 001. I mean, maybe there was one card I could have top decked. It would have largely depended on what the face-down cards were, but again, I can't really imagine too many worlds where I actually managed to come back here. So, GG to ACV here. I do respect Sky Strikers very much as a deck, so always nice to have a good game against them. Alright, let's look at the next replay here. Alright, so like I touched on towards the start of the last game there, this game is also going to be a fairly decent back and forth. Oh, it's against a 60-card Witchcrafter deck, by the way. Yeah, this game will also be a fairly solid back and forth with our opponent here in terms of like just number of turns and interactivity and all that fun stuff. Because yeah, I don't like to just show games where I completely blow the opponent out and they don't stand a chance, nor do I like to show games where I get blown out and I just didn't stand a chance. You know, I'm definitely not opposed to showing losses, as we can tell by the last game, but yeah, I just like to have those good back and forth. So I'm just going to set call by and pass here. I don't really have a whole lot else I can do, but I do still have Ash and Nibiru, so it's not like I'm like out of things. Like, it's not like I'm just sitting here just going to watch what my opponent's doing. But yeah, I'll go ahead and call by the Shemitah here, just in case they had like another card that I could Ash where they tried to get back up an advantage, and sure enough they did. So I was able to Ash the Searcher there. We draw a Maxx, which is like continuing our hand here of like not really proactive, but at least has reactive stuff, so we at least have that going for us. Here I draw an Emergence. Again, Vessel also doesn't really do anything by itself because we can't get a non-effect monster on the board. I finally draw the Emergence, but my opponent's got an Ash as one of their cards, so it's like, ugh, alright, well, I guess we're kind of back to square one here. So, yep, I'll just pass right back to my opponent, who will in turn pass right back to me. Again, this is invocative of that recent YCS Hartford semifinals. That meme, or I don't know if it's actually a meme, but I've seen it posted a lot where people are just sharing the like recap, the written recap, and it's like, you know, the first player drew and passed, the second player drew and passed, first player drew and passed, second player drew and passed. It's kind of how some of these games have been playing out a little bit, but it's all good. Yeah, I'll go ahead and Maxx in response to my opponent's Holiday, bringing back a monster here. I'm just going to try to, you know, use Ecclesia during my next turn. And looks like I'm going to get to do that as my opponent does not have any further plays. But now they do get to start adding back their Witchcrafter spells, which is obviously not ideal for me. Obviously, I much prefer them to have fewer cards in hand. But the cards they're adding back aren't, like, particularly useful to them in this scenario. So, speaking of things that aren't particularly useful in this scenario, we draw into their Maxx, and then our opponent Maxx. So, yeah, obviously I'm still going to call by here, but now it's like, great. Now not only was Maxx already not that great of a draw, now it's not going to be able to be used during my opponent's next turn either. I did actually stop here and think about chaining my Maxx to my own called by, just in case my opponent had a Nibiru here, but I ultimately decided that it wasn't, it was fine. It wasn't really worth it. So I'll summon the Taia here, but of course I know my opponent's going to activate it, or negate it rather. They're going to activate their Verita negate is what I meant to say, but Now I can go ahead and summon Protos here. I'll call Light, which is a little bit scary because now that means I can't use Maxx or Nibiru during my opponent's next turn, but, you know, they've still got to battle over my Protos and just get over it in general. And, you know, they can't destroy it by card effects, so they can't use the, what's her name? Hyene? This one, yeah. Yeah, Hein, however you say her name. They can't use her to get rid of my Protos, because they can't battle over her, and they can't destroy, they can't destroy my Protos by card effects, so I know I'm at least safe in that regard. And yeah, like I said, we managed to make it through our opponent's turn just fine. Now RC and Nibiru are live once again. Well, relatively live, you know. Obviously, our hand in general is still pretty dead. This is the one thing I really don't like about Vessel. It's still right to play in this deck, I think, at 2 copies. But all in all, Vessel just really doesn't do anything by itself, like, at all. It doesn't, it's a good extender, but it's not a starter in any way, shape, or form. And then, yeah, there are sometimes we only have Vessel and Mo Ye, which has now come up a couple of times. I think we had another game earlier where that was the case. And, yeah, I mean, you know, it doesn't make Mo Ye live either, which is, it doesn't really come up that often, but I don't know. It's not like I would cut down on Vessels. I still would definitely keep 2 copies in the deck. I'm just kind of complaining about it, I guess. I don't know. Even though I don't like to complain, but, you know, every now and then for just getting it off your chest, I guess. I don't know. I'm definitely going to call level 8 here because I want to hit a Madame Ver. There is also the Golem, which we do end up hitting. That's level 8 that I forgot about, but mostly called level 8 for Madame Ver here. So my opponent wouldn't summon one. I'm fine with them summoning another Hyene Hain. She's level 6, but yeah, like I said, we end up hitting a Golem here. My opponent does have another Witchcrafter Holiday to get back a Madame Ver, but yeah, that's a little annoying, but ultimately not too big of a deal here. Yeah, again, they'll get back a bunch of Witchcrafter spells, but none of these are particularly scary for me. The Unveiling can be, depending on, you know, if they have something to get a summon off of it, but honestly, the most scary thing they end up getting back during this turn was the Buy Streak, because that means that Protos by itself is not going to be enough to destroy this Madame Ver. My opponent does have a Maxx here, but thanks to drawing the Longyuan here, I'm fairly certain I can just get lethal this turn, even though they have the Buy Street. So I'm just going to go ahead and play through it anyway. Yeah, using the Vishuda in order to bait out the Madame Ver's effect. There actually was consideration to trying to use Protos to bait out Madame Ver before doing any of this, but yeah, we managed to get to the... Oh no, we already did bait out the Ver. That's right. And then we used the Vishuda to bounce. Sorry, I'm thinking of... I think a different turn? No. Did I play another game? I don't know what I was thinking of there. Maybe I was just thinking of alternative lines that I was thinking about when I was actually playing the game, but whatever. We managed to make a Baron, and obviously that's going to be enough to lethal our opponent here. So, cool, yeah, I've got one more game for us to take a look at. Let's go ahead and move right into it. Alright, final replay we're going to watch for this video is a shorter one. It's going to be a game against Brigade Zodiac, which is definitely a favored matchup for us in general. Kind of regardless of whether you're going first or second. Obviously, you're more favored going first than second, but even going second, I think your matchup against Trizu is still, like, very slightly in Swordsoul's favor. Like, very slightly. But, yeah, opponent's going to lead with the typical fractal line here. I've really only got Maxi as my only interaction, so obviously going to wait until my opponent activates a Brigade effect to activate the C. Now that they have committed to doing so, I'll go ahead and chain. Especially because they've also committed to normal summoning Kit here. But my opponent doesn't have a response, which we always like to see, so they're going to have to let it resolve here. Looks like they have the Fusion Destiny, though, alongside the Baron, so they're still able to set up DPE plus Revolt while only giving me 2 draws, which is very, very good. I mean, I think this is probably the best response my opponent could have had in general, so... But even though we only got 2 draws, as you can see, they were very good draws, getting both Emergence and Blackout, particularly the Emergence, but Blackout also being a really good draw here. So, yeah, we know our opponent's got DPE plus Revolt set up there, so I definitely need to bait these out here. I'm going to start with the Ashuna. I mean, regardless of whether or not I'm baiting a play out or just making plays in general, specialing Ashuna is typically the way to go. Starting off, and then I can special the Adhara. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and start going into the Hulk line. So that way I can try to get plays off without committing my normal summon. Again, I know my opponent's got, responses. I'm just trying to bait them out more than anything else at this point. So, yeah, they're letting everything resolve so far, which is totally fine with me. Okay, if you're wondering where, as the Trizu player, you should like activate Revolt and or DPE, because I think what's happening here, or why my opponent has not flipped Revolt yet, is I think they're being greedy. I think they're trying to like get a banish and a destroy. Like what they want to do is have two things on board they want to get rid of, and then they can chain Revolt. They can activate Revolt and then chain DPE's effect to chain resolves backwards, DP activates, blows up one of my things, then Revolt resolves, and they banish another one of my things. But even though I only had one thing on the board to get rid of at the time this was the case, I think my opponent should have revolted my Monk. If you can get a non-effect monster off of the board against Swordsoul Tenyi, that's often going to set them back quite a ways as far as the number of plays, or what, not the number of plays, but actually the number of plays and what kind of plays they can make. So I think that would have been the place to activate Revolt, and then later, maybe you can DPE pop itself, which, is not quite as good as DPE popping Revolt. Well, it also kind of depends. I don't know. I just have to assume here my opponent got a little bit too greedy, which is why they've been allowing all these things to resolve, because they do have a DD Crone response for the Deskbot. Obviously that's going to have to be fine. I don't really have a response for that, but I am going to have to get a little bit creative here. So I know my opponent's face down is Revolt, and I want to force at least one of these answers before I normal summon or activate Longyuan, just in general before I continue committing plays with cards in my hand. So I'm still going to activate Auroradon first. I'll sack one of the tokens to destroy a card on the field. And I thought by activating that effect, my opponent would then, respond with Revolt, but I guess they might have thought that, like, this targeted, but this effect does not target to destroy a card on the field. So as soon as they let the Auroradon effect resolve without popping Revolt, I was then able to destroy Revolt without them having a response to, having a chance to chain it. So if you were wondering what happened there and why my opponent didn't respond with Revolt, it's because of because they chose the times rather they chose not to activate it. They just weren't able to end up using it. So that's the main reason I wanted to show this replay, is you gotta think about stuff like that. You can't let yourself get too greedy, which again is what I'm assuming happened with my opponent here. It's the only reason why I could think they would not, use Revolt or DPE up to this point. But yeah, so I can go ahead and use my Ashuna effect at this point. I don't really think I'm gonna need to summon any non-worms. So by doing this, we can go into Yazi to force the DPE, again, all without having to commit my normal summon. So they'll go ahead and pop Auroradon, and then I still end up losing my Yazi, but that's totally fine, because Yazi can just go ahead and summon the Mo Ye here. And now I can Mo Ye and Taia and Longyuan, and I still have an Emergence, and I have a Blackout, and I have a Maxx for next turn, so. And yeah, at this point my opponent realizes, like, I still haven't normal summoned. I'm still way up on resources. And yeah, I'm still pretty easily able to win there. So yeah, kind of, again, I wanted to show that game off as an example of, like, maybe a bit of greed. Again, I think that's probably why my opponent held on to DPE, and activating DPE and or Revolt for as long as they did was more or less just greed. So definitely not a pitfall you want to succumb to. So, all right, that's all the footage I've got to show you for now. Let's go ahead and take one last look at the deck before we go to the end of the video there. Okay, everyone, as I always do, I want to give a hearty and genuine thank you to everyone who watched to the end of the video like this. That is super helpful, and I very much appreciate you doing it. But I mean, even people who aren't listening to this, if you watched in general, like, that's all that really matters to me. I do appreciate people who comment and subscribe as well. Comments are very much appreciated, as I said earlier in the video, as I say all the time. Your guys' feedback and constructive criticism is so helpful to my growth as a player, and not just my growth either, but also other people who are also watching the video, because I'm not perfect. None of us are a perfect player, and I certainly am not. So being able to chime in and be like, hey, at this point in time, this actually would have been a better line to do. Again, that not only helps me for my future games, but also helps other people who are watching. So just being able to like learn together as a community, that's my favorite part of doing this whole channel endeavor so far. It's just so cool to me how we're all like improving together, because, you know, as many comments as I get of people saying like, oh, I'm improving because of your videos, like I feel that I very much am also improving because of you guys watching and commenting. So you know, in terms again of not only the feedback and advice, but also just the motivation to keep going by you guys watching, that definitely yeah, fuels my desire to keep making better decks, keep analyzing the meta, keep talking about just the game in general. So very much appreciative to all of you. Yeah, without further ado, I think that's about all I've got. This is Hexlex signing out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.